It's owned. The hip-hop community is most likely owned by gay, to be honest with
But
you.
you think they'll be
They're owned by
closet?
gay. I happen to think there's a gay mafia in hip-hop.
To pledge, to be a pledge.
That's a fact.
In order to climb the ladder in the music industry, you have to be hazed. And when you're getting hazed, you getting in your ass.
So you think you
know what I'm
say like basically
this homosexual ritual? I'm saying
everything Diddy was doing to young boys actually happened to him by his mentor named Clive Davis. This man introduced Diddy to the music industry, and he actually came out as bisexual recently. And it's been said, allegedly, that he forced Diddy to do certain things with him in order for Diddy to start his career.
Picture this. A packed Manhattan courtroom gasps as an ex-assistant describes secret freak-off parties thrown by Sean Diddy Combs, while outside, Fat Joe suddenly reminds the world he once warned that a hidden gay mafia really runs hip-hop. Coincidence, or the first crack in a wall powerful people spent decades guarding? Because if Joe's old claims line up with what witnesses are now spilling under oath, the industry's darkest open secret may finally be on record. And nobody at the top. Look back in 2011, a grinning Fat Joe slid into VladTV's studio and dropped a grenade. The hip-hop community is most likely owned by Gay, my man. He wasn't talking about rappers, he meant the editors, radio programmers, award show bosses who decide whose single spins and whose career stalls. Overnight, blogs lit up, radio hosts whispered, and then silence. No big artist echoed him, no label pushed back. It was as if the culture entered a forced hush, afraid to touch the topic Joe had yanked into daylight. Industry veterans still say that moment drew an invisible line. Speak on it, and you'll feel the blowtorch behind the velvet rope. But the eerie calm that followed was just the eye of the storm.
Once again, whatever his preference is, it's up to him. You know what I'm saying? I ain't here to tell nobody what they do or whatever the kid, what's right or what's wrong.
4 years after dropping the gay mafia grenade, Fat Joe slid back onto VladTV with an oddly careful smile. This time, he insisted his earlier rant was really a message of empowerment, saying he only wanted closeted artists to feel safe being themselves. Gone was the fire and brimstone talk of shadow gatekeepers. In its place was a mellow call for inclusivity. Viewers didn't buy it. Comment sections lit up with side-by-side clips showing how his tone had flipped from fearless to almost apologetic. Bloggers quickly filled the gap. One theory claimed Joe had received a hush-hush phone call from an industry heavyweight. Play nice or watch your bookings vanish. Another pointed to a sudden dip in his media appearances that year as proof he'd been benched until he walked the remarks back. Joe never confirmed a threat, but fans noticed how often he now dodged follow-up questions, chuckling, "Let's talk about the music, bro," whenever the mafia topic crept in. The optics were brutal. A Bronx legend who once dared to name the puppet masters now seemed more worried about stepping on invisible tripwires. And that nervous energy only grew as whispers about Diddy's freak-off parties started bubbling into public lawsuits. If Joe really got the warning call, who made it, and how high does that phone tree run? Next, the Diddy files hit open court, and the protective wall Joe hinted at finally shows its cracks. It started with blue lights slicing across Miami's night sky. Homeland Security agents stormed Diddy's mansion in March 2024, seizing locked gun cases, hard drives, and a suitcase stuffed with prescription bottles and baby oil. Evidence prosecutors later called party starter kits. 14 months later, the hall is center stage in a Manhattan Ryko courtroom. Cameras aren't allowed inside, but leaked sketches show the once untouchable mogul hunched over defense notes while federal lawyers paint him as a sex trafficking kingpin who bought silence with private jets and diamond watches. Then came the voice that froze the room. A former assistant, identified only as Mia, described being ordered to arrange what Diddy called freak-offs. Cocaine-laced orgies where staff were told to keep the liquor flowing and the phones locked up. When she tried to quit, she testified Combs laughed and warned, "Nobody walks away from me." Minutes later, jurors heard Cassie Ventura's pre-recorded deposition. She said premieres for her albums lived or died on freak-offs, and that pleasing Diddy meant recruiting new women, or men, while security blocked exits. The next shock came from the witness box. Kid Cudi swore his Porsche exploded after he refused Diddy's party invite. A Molotov cocktail hurled into the engine bay. Flames gutted the car. Detectives called it arson. Cudi told the jury, "I knew exactly who sent the message." Prosecutors argue those explosions were literal and figurative. They say Combs operated under a protection network above the police, citing traffic stops where officers apologized and waved cars through after hearing his voice on speakerphone. If that network exists, it sounds eerily like the hidden hierarchy Fat Joe called out in 2011. A hierarchy veterans claim has policed hip-hop for decades. And that takes us back to the origin story of the so-called gay mafia, long before Diddy or even Bad Boy Records ruled the charts. Next,
in the ritual of Baphomet, the transgender, to show allegiance to him, you had to kiss his ring.
long before hashtags and TMZ, shock jock Wendy Williams lit up New York radio in the mid-90s by hinting there were multiple secret gay rappers running the culture. Her blunt catchphrase, "Pinkies up," sparked furious call-ins and planted the idea that hip-hop's real gatekeepers might be hidden in plain sight. A decade later, Oakland pioneer 2 Hort doubled down on VladTV. Smirking into the camera, he said he kept hearing about a gay mafia that could make or break a career with one phone call, but warned he'd never repeat the stories on air because something bad might happen. Fans caught the nervous laugh. The clip still circulates as Exhibit A in the conspiracy files. Then came the hard-hitting Texans. Pimp C blasted rappers butt naked in rooms together to hide closet lives, calling that fakery more dangerous than any street beef. Months later, he was found dead under murky circumstances. Around the same time, DMX ranted that execs were forcing newcomers into humiliating favors just to get radio play, another voice that soon fell eerily silent. Fast forward to the streaming era, and soul singer Jaguar Wright is on talk shows naming names, claiming powerful men passed Diddy the same predatory blueprint they once used on him. Her allegations triggered legal threats and a televised retraction, but not before gay mafia trended all over again. Pattern spotted? Every whistleblower either walks back their words or disappears. And with Diddy's trial cracking doors open, those old warnings suddenly read like prophetic breadcrumbs leading straight to today's witness stand. Next, mentors, middlemen, and the shadow hierarchy that may have groomed the moguls we thought were kings. Every legend needs a kingmaker, and in Sean Diddy Combs' rise, 2 names keep popping up: Clive Davis and Andre Harrell. Long before Diddy was plastered on magazine covers, he showed up at Uptown Records in 1990 as an eager intern under Harrell's watch. Harrell, who founded Uptown in the mid-'80s, treated Diddy like a son, giving him tips, gigs, and the ultimate nudge to strike out on his own. Andre Harrell influenced me the most, Diddy later said, calling him like a father figure who urged him to create Bad Boy Records in 1993. But the story doesn't end with a handshake and a job offer. Years after Harrell gave Diddy his first shot, Jaguar Wright dropped a bombshell. She claimed that Harrell's Uptown environment was rife with secret rituals, and that Clive Davis, Diddy's greatest teacher, was the one who set the blueprint. According to Wright, Davis didn't just mentor Diddy musically. He allegedly pushed him toward behavior that blurred professional favors and personal compromise. Wright pointed to Davis's 2013 memoir, where he publicly revealed he'd been bisexual since his Studio 54 days. She suggested those private admissions tied into a larger pattern of initiation rites for rising stars. Indeed, Clive Davis's 2013 autobiography, The Soundtrack of My Life, marked one of the few times a top-tier executive admitted to a non-straight orientation, yet it also set off new whispers. In it, Davis describes relationships spanning decades, but never mentions any hazing ceremonies. That silence, Wright argues, is exactly what built the mystique. They groom you, then they hush you, she said on a recent livestream. So, was Diddy merely a protege receiving honest lessons in A&R, or was he being funneled through a darker channel designed by Harrell and Davis? Industry veterans recall Diddy himself praising Harrell's tutelage, saying, "When Andre told me to go create my own empire, I listened." But they rarely mention the sideline favors that came with loyalty. Meanwhile, Davis's revelation of bisexuality seemed to confirm what insiders had been hinting at for years. If Davis and Harrell were the original gatekeepers, every major move Diddy made afterward might trace back to their hidden agendas. But uncovering the mentor-mentee bond only scratches the surface, because if these architects of Bad Boy were part of a covert network, what happens when proteges like Diddy begin enforcing those same rules on the next generation? And how many careers have been built, or broken, by rights that extend far beyond studio sessions and boardroom deals? Next up, we dive into the whistleblower curse. Artists who name names and then vanished, from Coolio to Pimp C.
The sodomy ritual, yes, the ritual that they use in order to conjure up energy. Call it magic, call it black magic, call it whatever you want, but they do that.
But here's where it really goes left.
Speaking out carries a steep price, and few stories prove it, like Coolio's final interview on Hip Hop Uncensored in April 2022. He opened up about being pressured by industry big shots to perform compromising acts just to secure a contract. Then, only 5 months later, he was found dead on a bathroom floor. Fans noticed that his candid remarks about the gay mafia and clandestine favors vanished from circulation almost overnight. Then there's Pimp C, who in 2006 publicly called out rappers who play tough but live that gay life. He insisted that artists were forced into butt-naked room scenarios to prove loyalty. Less than a year after those interviews aired, Pimp C died in his hotel room under suspicious circumstances. Officially ruled an accidental overdose, but eyewitnesses described a scene more fitting a ritual than a drug mishap. DMX also got burned by the same flame. In 2000, he raged about label execs demanding degrading favors from up-and-coming MCs just to get radio spins. Shortly after those comments went public, his career began unraveling amid legal woes and erratic public appearances. He died in 2021, and many fans wonder if his early warnings were more than coincidence. The pattern is chilling. Every artist who named names either recanted in fear or disappeared. Careers derailed, lives cut short. Whispers suggest that once the gay mafia network marks you, it doesn't forget. And now, with Diddy's trial exposing protective shields that resemble Joe's old warnings, listeners ask, if even legends like Coolio and Pimp C couldn't survive speaking the truth, what hope does anyone have of pulling back the curtain? Next, Fat Joe's sudden 180 degrees. Was it survival instinct or proof that the tentacles of that network still grip the industry? In April 2025, Fat Joe sat down with Ebro on Hot 97, ostensibly to share his thoughts on Diddy's trial. Yet viewers couldn't ignore how he danced around any mention of his old gay mafia claim. Instead of doubling down, he offered prayers for Diddy and his family, saying, I've been praying for him. He's my friend for 30 years. His posture was tense, eyes flickering off camera whenever the conversation veered toward industry power players. It was a far cry from the bold Joe who back in 2011 had bluntly announced on VladTV that there's a gay mafia in hip-hop. Now, 4 years after he reframed that statement as mere empowerment talk, he refused to revisit it, steering every question into safe territory. Fans and insiders quickly drew the conclusions themselves. What changed between 2011 and 2025? Joe's visible unease suggested that calling out these gatekeepers still carries a massive risk. Rumors swirl that sometime after 2014, when he first backpedaled, he weathered a serious health scare widely attributed to too much stress and an alleged warning delivered behind closed doors. While Joe has never publicly confirmed a direct threat, his shift from defiant whistleblower to cautious confidant screams of an unspoken price for speaking out. The same fans who once queued up his records now wonder if the man who once rattled hip-hop's cage is too frightened to do it again. Ultimately, Fat Joe's 180 degree isn't just a career pivot, it's a stark reminder that even rap legends can be silenced. If Joe herself recoils at naming names, it's clear those shadows still loom large. So if he won't speak up, who will? And what does that say about the network behind the headlines? Next, we dive into the big question. Are these whispers of a gay mafia merely metaphorical for corporate greed? Or is there really a shadow syndicate pulling strings behind closed doors?
It's owned. The hip-hop community is most likely owned by gay, to be honest with you.
You think they'll be...
They're owned by gay. I happen to think there's a gay mafia in hip-hop.
For decades, whispers of a gay mafia in hip-hop have rift between truth-seeking and outright paranoia. On one hand, artists and insiders insist there's a clandestine network, executives, programmers, and label heads protecting each other, deciding careers in hushed boardrooms and exclusive mansion rituals. From Clive Davis and Andre Harrell shepherding Diddy to VladTV's leaked stories of hazing ceremonies, the evidence seems to echo. Call them out, and you pay a grave price. Witness accounts in Diddy's 2025 trial now reinforce the idea of institutional protection above the police, as Mia testified about cops turning a blind eye when Diddy's name was dropped. Yet critics argue the gay mafia narrative often veers dangerously close to homophobic scapegoating. They point out that hip-hop's historic unease with LGBTQ artists, fraught with slurs and exclusion, may have fueled sensational rumors rather than real cabals. In fact, as The Guardian noted back in 2011, Fat Joe's proclamation that the hip-hop community is most likely owned by gays did push homophobia into the mainstream spotlight, but it also prompted many in the LGBTQ+ community to reject the trope as harmful and baseless. That article argued hip-hop's broader cultural shift away from homophobia should focus on acceptance and visibility, not conspiracy. So what are we to believe? Is there a literal syndicate of gay executives pulling strings in hidden chambers, dictating who gets radio spins and who ends up burned? Or is gay mafia a convenient catch-all for frustrations with corporate greed, commercial gatekeeping, and the uphill battle any artist faces, especially if they're black and queer in a hyper-masculine culture? Perhaps it's both, a metaphor for a network of insiders protecting mutual interests, while homophobia fuels a conspiracy frame that blames a group already sidelined rather than confronting systemic exploitation. The real question, with Diddy's trial testimony revealing a protection machine that shielded him from law enforcement and rumors of private parties where favors secured deals, can anyone deny that shadowy power brokers, gay or straight, have long shaped hip-hop's fate? And if calling out that system still risks a career or a life, maybe gay mafia is just the loudest label for a much darker truth. An entertainment industry that's built on secrets, compromises, and unspoken rules that hurt anyone brave enough to name them. From Fat Joe's bombshell VladTV rant in 2011 to Diddy's 2025 federal trial, the gay mafia saga has threaded through hip-hop history, drawing a straight line from whispered warnings to courtroom revelations. Whether the network is a literal cabal of closeted executives or a symbolic stand-in for deeply entrenched power plays, the result is the same. Artists who spoke up paid a steep price, and fans are left asking who really holds the reins. Now, as Diddy's lawyers scramble to explain how an alleged sex trafficking ring thrived under a protective canopy, Fat Joe's old claim resonates louder than ever. The truth may lie beyond that loaded phrase, but one thing is clear. Until the industry sheds its cloak of secrecy, gay, straight, or otherwise, some stories will always remain off limits, and those who seek to expose them will keep playing a dangerous game. What will the next testimony reveal? Only time will tell.